Harry Houdini and his relationship with Newport is the subject of a splendid new play that'll soon be touring the whole country. A Regular Little Houdini tells the story of Houdini's escapades on his 2 visits to the city in the early 20th century. The play's been written and will be performed by the Newport-born actor Daniel LLewelyn-Williams, who I'm delighted to say is with me in the studio this morning. Dan, morning, welcome, lovely to see you. How come you sit down and write a play about Harry Houdini? Was this something you were always burning to do?
Good morning, Jamie. Not really, no. I started off researching a theatre in Newport called the Lyceum Theatre, which unfortunately was knocked down in 1969. Absolutely amazing Victorian theatre. And I just was researching into that as a hobby. And I sort of came across information about Harry Houdini. And apparently he loved the theatre so much that he used Newport and that theatre as his base from which to launch his 2 British tours, one in 1905 and the next one 8 years later in 1913.
Because all these years on, I mean, it's easy to forget what a huge star he was.
Oh, absolutely massive. And the medium of print was essential at this point, because he really did sort of ride the early waves of PR. He used the early form of print and these stunts, if you will. The first stunt he pulled, he got himself arrested
in Newport.
In Newport, he got himself arrested. He posed as a drunk on the docks in Newport, and they arrested him. They put him in Pill Police Station. He challenged the duty officer to lock his clothes in the next cell, because these people didn't know who he was, by the way, because at that point print didn't show photographs, so they just had illustrations. Nobody knew what Harry Houdini looked like. So he challenged them to lock his clothes in the next cell. He then, when they went off on break, he then, 4 minutes later, walked out of the police station, unchallenged, fully clothed, where there was a reporter and a photographer waiting for him, all over the national press the next day.
A great spin. What a great stunt.
Awesome.
And I mean, his relationship to Newport, obviously very strong indeed. What else is the play about?
The play is also, it's told through the eyes of a young boy who grows up between these 2 visits of Harry Houdini. The second time Harry came in 1913, he pulled an equally audacious stunt where he jumped off Newport Bridge tied up in chains, and there was 20,000 people hanging off Newport Bridge, just there, desperate to catch a glimpse of the famous man. Now, our boy grows up between those two dates, which is 8 years of the biggest industrial growth in Wales, during which point our boy sees the building of the Transporter Bridge and the Newport Docks disaster.
And that was 1909, wasn't it? I mean, what happened in the Newport Docks disaster? Because this is touched on in the play, isn't it?
It was a horrendous accident. And not many people really know much about it today. Basically, they were building what at the time was the biggest sea lock in the world. And they had to excavate the riverbed of where the Usk meets the Severn. The Usk and the River Ebru converge on the Severn. And so they dammed off the estuary, drained the basin and excavated down below the level of the seabed, 50 feet below that. So this trench was 100 feet long, 30 feet wide. It collapsed on top of 50 men who were building the timber work to hold this trench apart. They were using the most modern engineering techniques at the time. It was totally unexpected. It was a freak accident, and 39 men died.
Now, you obviously love this city, you love the story, and for an actor, I mean, it's a great actor's part, isn't it?
Oh, well, certainly. I mean, in the show, I actually play Harry as well, even though for 90% of the show, I am the young boy growing up from the age of 10 to the age of 18, idolising Houdini throughout this period. And the boy does everything to emulate Houdini. That's his dream, although he comes from a lowly Docklands background. His father's a docker, his dad's a policeman, and everybody in that age was expected to conform to as they are today, really, as well. But back then, to have dreams of something like emulating Houdini or working in show business was absolutely unrealistic.
It's a one-man show, isn't it? I mean, you pretty much play all the characters yourself. I mean, presumably that's quite a challenge for an actor to be on stage that much.
Well, indeed, yeah. But I mean, I wrote it because I wanted to play all those parts, because all of those parts spoke to me, and the whole story spoke to me. It's a very personal story for me. The boy is loosely based around members of my family. All my family come from Pill, and they were dockers and policemen in the docks throughout the Edwardian period and onwards. And so I got a chance to actually put a lot of my family stories into this play.
You know, there'll be lots of people listening who didn't know any of this stuff about Houdini in Newport and the story of the docks. And it's sad, isn't it, to think that these huge, big events perhaps aren't so well known as they might be.
No, they're not. And unfortunately, Newport has suffered a little bit from a lack of self-promotion and perhaps a lack of self-confidence. And this is a very valid historical event, a series of events, which Newport and people of Wales should be very proud of, because it's not only part of the history of Newport. It's a real interesting point within British industrial history, but also a sort of transitional point in show business, because Harry Houdini was the pinnacle. He really was. He was a megastar.
And very shortly, of course, looking at this period of time, very shortly, showbiz was going to change, because you have the rise of the movies, you have the rise of photography, you have radio very shortly, a decade later. We are seeing the end of a certain period in showbiz, aren't we?
What the sort of the music hall period, the sort of vaudevillian-esque sort of thing, which Harry Houdini came from, of course. But I mean, Harry Houdini was able to transcend those different mediums, and he was very much at the forefront of PR.
Now, we know you from things like Torchwood, EastEnders and Midsummer Murders and Doctors and things like that. I mean, it's very different being on stage, isn't it? And well, there's no chance for a second take.
No. But theatre is really my bread and butter. I mean, I've been doing a lot of work at Theatre Clwyd over the years, and in the West End, a lot of Shakespeare, and that is the. It really does excite me, the fact that you're playing to an audience. And I mean, most actors feel that working on stage is their favourite pastime. If they could do it all the time, they'd do it.
How did you get in?